the government moved to Chongqing in Sichuan province. It was a remote, undeveloped region ruled by warlords and had never been under Chiang's control. The Japanese bombed Chongqing for weeks at a time. The war effort was hopelessly undersupplied and underfunded. Chiang shored up his government with propaganda and parades. To boost morale, Madame Chiang Kai-shek toured hospitals and orphanages. Chongqing held on. Many other Chinese traveled to the northwest, to Yan'an, where the communists had set up their headquarters after the Long March. They came because they wanted to fight Japan, and because there was a sense here of building a new society. The atmosphere of these early days is remembered as one of enthusiasm and exuberance, the Yan'an spirit. Yan'an was still small enough that most people had contact with the leadership. Mao was developing some of his most important theoretical work. He was adapting Marxism to conditions in China. His theories were studied by all who came to Yan'an.
I went to the anti-Japanese university in Yan'an in the fall of 1938. We had classes on current affairs, philosophy, and so on. None of us minded the hard conditions. At night, we shared huge beds. Each person had just this little space, about a foot, one next to the other. We got up early in the morning. We did morning drill, and we learned how to use weapons to fight the Japanese. The term was only a few months long. Then we would be sent to the front, and we sang this song.
From Yan'an, the young people were sent to work in villages throughout North China and Manchuria. They recruited anyone who would resist Japan. They also changed the face of North China by initiating moderate reforms, reducing land rent and taxes. They held elections and introduced voting. The communists carefully built rural middle-class support, and they avoided the violent class struggle they had used in the past.
Our slogan was, if you have money, give money. If you have a gun, give your gun. And if you are healthy, come and fight. We didn't attack the rich. We even allied with landlords as long as they were not collaborators and wanted to resist.
I am from a rich farming family. When the party started in our area, why did they come to us, who were upper class? Because the poor peasants couldn't afford to give up their work in the fields. Besides, they were not necessarily more progressive than we were.
Women were the most constrained by tradition. Even in the early 1940s, many young girls still had their feet bound, and they were often treated as virtual slaves by their families.
For example, a woman had no rights in her own family. Since she had no income, she was dependent. When someone knocked on the door asking, "Is anyone home?" she would say, "No, there's no one here." See? She didn't even think of herself as a person.
Wang Xinlan had married Xiao Hua, a young communist officer.
After work, Xiao Hua and I used to walk through the village holding hands. Sometimes after dinner we would just sit there talking and laughing. They were very envious. They said, "You must have done a lot of good in your previous life for God to have given you such a good husband." I said, "That's got nothing to do with it. It's because women like me have changed our political status. We're independent people. Among us, men and women are equal. We are equal even though he is the husband and I am the wife." We tried to explain this to them. It was all very surprising to them.
The communist call to fight Japan, combined with their moderate social reforms, had a powerful appeal. Throughout North China, the party established a solid base of support. And the resistance they organized was effective. Liang Yangheng describes how he and a friend ambushed a Japanese regiment which came to their village.
These two areas had more than 10 landmines. When the enemy came, we triggered the mines. They got blown up on both sides. We wouldn't let the bastards get away. The enemy came towards us, and the two of us were really happy. The guy with me was called Feng He. I said, "What about it, Feng He? You get the officer. I'll get the guy over there." Feng He aimed at the Japanese officer. Bang! He got him right in the head. He keeled over. I pulled my trigger. Bang! Got another one. The enemy sent a regiment with 100 carts. They came to take our wheat, but we didn't lose any. Their carts didn't go back empty, though. They carried the bodies of 60 dead devils.
The Japanese responded to communist resistance with a campaign of terror called Burn All, Kill All, Loot All. They decimated any village with communist connections and fragmented communist control of the region. The communists and nationalists were still officially fighting Japan together, bound by the United Front. But there were frequent clashes between the two sides. In January 1941, nationalist forces suddenly attacked a communist unit. The unit was wiped out. It was the end of the United Front. Mao sent a message to Chiang Kai-shek. Those who play with fire ought to be careful. If things continue to develop this way, all the people of the country will throw you into the gutter. Chiang's response to a journalist was, "The Japanese are a disease of the skin. The communists are a disease of the heart." Chongqing, the Japanese continued to bomb Chiang Kai-shek's wartime capital. By December 1941, the war had been going on for nearly 5 years. Nationalist armies had taken beating after beating. Japan was winning the war.
Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, and the United States declared war on Japan. I knew then that Japan was bound to be defeated, bound to lose the war.
Today, we, the people of the United States, fighting a desperate rear-guard action against the Japs, grimly realize that our future depends upon holding a fighting China as our ally. Well, may we ponder what might happen if China should fall, if the full force of Japan, now deadlocked in China, were released to strike into India, into Australia, into Mexico or Canada, or California.
Despite the propaganda, the Allies gave China low priority. They were struggling to survive the war in Europe. General Joseph Stilwell was named the top American commander in China. Stilwell had lived in China and he spoke the language. His job was to keep China in the war and improve its fighting capacity. He commanded Chinese troops, and he believed that, properly trained, they would be among the best in the world. But he railed against the nationalist command.
He would speak in expletives to me about the Chinese generalship because he would find them pig-headed, vacillating, they'd change their mind. And again, Jiang would not want to commit a large force to gain an objective. He would send it in driblets, and it would then be consumed by the Japanese in driblets.